could AI actually build enterprise-grade software?
There is that potential out there. There's a lot of immature engineering delivery teams. I think AI is only going to amplify that. I think you might see some big companies getting replaced by maybe even smaller companies or more agile companies.
So when do they realize that they need you?
When it's too late, usually.
What would you say is more challenging, integration of egos or technology?
Today, we're talking to Thomas Varan, who works for PE-backed software companies, supporting bolt-on integrations. He's worked with portfolio companies of Blackstone, Axel KKR, Rubicon, and Blue Ladder, bringing together the engineering teams of the merged businesses. And he calls the gap between the due diligence and value creation time the dead zone, which sometimes hinders the integration. So, Thomas, welcome to Building Great Tech. Great to have you on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Just for context a little bit, because obviously you work for all this the portfolio companies of those really big PE firms, but could you give us a little bit of context? How big were the businesses that you were helping?
Yeah, so it really depends on the size of the portfolio company. My specialty would be like the mid to lower market software companies. I think the larger software companies and the larger PE firms typically have their own value creation teams, and they have these tech playbooks that they can deploy to a lot of the companies. But I see a lot of commonality at that mid to lower market PE firms. They don't really have an engineering operations playbook. And usually when they purchase a company, the due diligence flags the roadmap governance, metrics and reporting, and a lot of typical engineering operations issues. And that doesn't really line up with the first 90 days of the value creation plan. And that's the dead zone in which I'm referring to. So engineering is a black box. The board doesn't really see what they're doing. They're not sure what's going to be shipping on time. And that's where I come in.
Right. Okay. So that's when the time. So when do they realize that they need you?
When it's too late, usually. So in my opinion, what they should be doing is as soon as they acquire a company and have a stable platform, that's when they need to do the assessment itself of how healthy is our engineering teams, how frequently are they shipping? And unfortunately, that's not really part of their value creation plan. That's not part of their first 90 days, right? They're looking to really quickly understand what are the quick wins, what are the quick ROIs, and getting roadmap governance and reporting from engineering is never falls into that. So when they start acquiring companies, it's like they believe this magical thing will happen where everyone has time on their hands and they can start integrating companies and integrating project management tools. And unfortunately, there is really no one taking responsibility of integrating everything together and making sure everything's shipping on time. So when I usually get the call of needing help, it's usually when there's a little bit of fire going on where the CTO can't speak in the board meeting of where things are at, or there's potential customer churn because things aren't shipping on time, or engineers are complaining that there just isn't enough organization or project management going on.
Interesting. Do you think that maybe is a reflection of the private equity model where it's more financial, so they initially are looking to pull all those levers financially and processing and accounting and then so the product piece is a bit of a kind of disconnect, even though tons of them own all of these kind of software companies. It feels like maybe the software piece isn't necessarily looked at as part of that value creation plan, or do I misunderstand that?
Yeah, absolutely. So during due diligence, they actually flag a lot of these things. In fact, someone that I know very well that's been doing due diligence for many years, I've been talking with him frequently, and he's saying the two most common things that he flags in due diligence, especially for SaaS companies, it is roadmap governance and metrics and reporting to the board. And so both of those aren't sexy to PE firms because they're not really things that deliver immediate ROI. However, left unchecked and left unaccounted for, those things tend to build up. I think that from company to company, varies differently of who owns engineering delivery. Sometimes it's a CTO, sometimes it's a VP of engineering, but very rarely the teams are mature enough to be high performing. And in fact, there's a lot of metrics and reporting and reports out there that are saying about 80% of engineering organizations don't have mature engineering teams, meaning that they're not shipping frequently enough. They don't have, they don't have maturity in terms of reviewing even a PR or any sort of governance or any sort of deployment frequency. It is actually kind of mind-boggling how that's still happening today. And I think the counter argument is like, oh, well, SaaS companies are profitable. And that's actually not true. Yeah, if you look at the Rule 40, which is basically a SaaS health benchmark, it's taking growth rate and profit margin, and the benchmark is the number 40. And most SaaS companies are actually at a 28, and only 20% of companies are above that 40 mark. And for me, I think maybe it's a causation or correlation, but if you match it up with DORA's metrics, which is Google's DevOps research and assessment program, they are saying that about 20% of SaaS organizations that they survey actually meet that like high and achieving mature engineering teams. So I think there is a correlation between teams that are shipping frequently, are mature, as well as their profitability.
Right. And you mentioned the roadmap governance, right? In the DD. So what do you do like when you have, let's say, 3 or 4 companies being bolt on top of the existing platform? So I would imagine you have 4 different roadmaps. Like how do you then like bring it all together?
And what a mess, because you're actually saying, sorry to jump in there, but before you've got the challenge of actually integrating all of those 4 journeys and roadmaps and teams, there's also the fact that the underlying team isn't as efficient as it could be.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. So we have 2 things here, right? We have the roadmap, and then you're inheriting teams that are, a high chance of not being mature teams. And so the CTO has a lot on their hands, right? Like they are inheriting a mess, to be honest. And my role is to help them take off the engineering delivery and predictability and structure off their plate so they don't have to worry about it, so they can focus on, okay, what is the vision for our product? How do we want to integrate these companies or these technologies together? What does our platform look like in the future? And so they don't have to stress about whether the teams are going to be shipping on time or what the teams are going to be shipping. And so that's sort of the difference. And I've seen every company I've worked with, the expectation is the CTO is going to handle all of that. And typically they go back to what they know, which is technology. And they want to focus on the future of the platform, but no one is really owning that. Hey, let's get these structured correctly. Let's integrate the engineering teams together. Let's make sure our backlogs are clean and ready to go.
Hey guys, we're really hoping that you're enjoying this episode so far. And if you are, please like, subscribe, and follow. And if you really want to know more about who we are and what we do, go to buildinggreattech.com. Now let's go back to the episode. And can I ask you, what happens with the 4 other CTOs when the company is merging?
Don't ask that question.
I hate to use the typical consulting answer. It depends. It's funny, we say CTOs, but some of the companies are like 30 people companies. So it's like, are they really CTOs? That's debatable in and of itself. But, it depends. It depends on whether they had an equity package, whether they are okay, whether they want to stay on, or whether they want to kind of walk into the sunset, or whether they want to join as an individual contributor. I've seen CTOs kind of take the paycheck and walk away. I've seen CTOs become lead engineers on teams. I've seen them take on management roles for like VP roles. So it really just depends on the situation.
And when you arrive to that crazy mess, like what is your role? What do you do first?
Yeah. So the first thing I do is a diagnostic. I have to try to figure out what kind of mess I'm getting into, right? Like how mature are the teams, or how immature are the teams? What is the health of the backlog? So I have my own diagnostic rubric. It's about 27 questions, and I have the lead engineers kind of fill it out to get what their assessment is. And then I'm sitting in with the teams. I'm doing interviews. I'm looking into the backlogs. I'm trying to gather some metrics and reporting. And then this usually, depending on the size of the engineering team in the company, but usually takes 2 to 3 weeks. And by the third week, I'm creating an assessment and sort of a gap analysis between, hey, this is based on your thesis and what the goal of this engagement is. This is where we're at, and this is where we need to be. And then from there, I'm sitting down with engineering leadership, kind of explaining what the plan is, essentially what's the scope of this engagement, what does success look like. And then from there, if we agree upon it, I'm embedding myself into the teams and helping them build that muscle.
And when you say embedding, in what role?
Yeah, as a delivery manager, working within the teams to make sure that the product has a good agile mindset, that they're building out the correct user stories for the teams, that the teams are able to break it down correctly, that they're going through the ceremonies the correct way, and making sure that they're as efficient as possible. I feel like, especially with agile and Scrum, it's been diluted over the years. People have been preferring certifications over experience, and it's become more of like an industry rather than a mindset and a framework. So I think getting everyone on the same baseline of why we're doing what we're doing and understanding who our customer is and why we're delivering things is sort of like a good reset for companies.
Yeah, I love that. And onto that point, like, what do you see companies usually get wrong about what you do?
That's a great question. I think what companies get wrong about engineering delivery is that it's like the Spider-Man meme. Everyone is pointing at each other saying, oh, they own it, right? People are saying, oh, the CTO owns delivery. Oh, the VP owns delivery. Oh, the team should own delivery. And at the end of the day, if not one person is owning it, then no one's going to own it. And so when I come in, it is trying to figure out who's the best person to take this on beyond me. Because at the end of the day, what I'm trying to do is create high-performing, self-organizing teams. And that's the whole goal. A team that is able to ship frequently and owns their backlog and communicates well and is self-organized doesn't need someone like myself. And I'm essentially trying to work myself out of a job when I join these engagements and build these muscles within the team.
That's exactly what Scrum is, right?
Exactly. Yep. In fact, I would take it even one step further and say that if a team that stays together and is self-organized and is common, they'll find that the Scrum actually has a lot of constraints, and then they'll switch to being like a Kanban team so they can deliver it even faster as a group. So I've seen that a few times. I've seen like the Nirvana teams out there that are able to get to that point, but I feel like a lot of teams are 3 or 4 layers below that, which is the metrics and a lot of the reporting out there is showing that a good majority of teams have not adopted Agile or Scrum well, or not delivering frequently.
That's so hard to believe now, isn't it? Like,
It's still, that's still happening after so many years. Yeah.
It resonates, but it's crazy to think now, and everything that's happening with AI. Tell us a bit about the dead zone, this like hold period between the due diligence and the value creation.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm not really part of the first 90 days. Again, the value creation plan in the first 90 days is really the executive teams and the PE firm just kind of doing an assessment and trying to figure out, who do they want to bring forward into this company? What is our product? What are the things that we need to fix as quickly as possible? Do we have the correct business licenses? What does our accounting look like? What is our sales pipeline? So again, the engineering operations is like the ugly stepchild on the side of just like, hey, the teams, we purchased this company for a reason. They're somewhat profitable. We see a thesis here. Like, let's not touch that. So it's usually typically after the first 90 days, after they do their assessment and get their feet wet a little bit, do they start realizing, holy cow, like the metrics and reporting coming from engineering either A, don't exist, or B, aren't pretty.
Right. And so how does that dead zone play out then? Like, what's happening in that time? Is that what you're saying then the 90 days is where there's nothing really happening for you or your team, or like this stuff that you do?
Right. Oh, so well, if I'm in the teams and we're acquiring a company, I'm working with those engineering teams immediately. But if I'm not there, or if there is no one owning the engineering delivery, yeah, I think the engineering teams are just going as they have been in the past. I don't think they're slowing down. I don't think they're speeding up. I think it's just, business as usual. And so again, if we look back at the numbers and metrics from Dora and a lot of other sources, they're saying that the teams are not mature and releasing they're not releasing frequently enough. It's no one's taking that and enhancing the teams and making sure that whatever the thesis is for the platform and however they want to move forward with the company, the engineering teams aren't ready for that.
Cool.
Yeah, so you would, like, when you go in originally before integration, you would do some work with the teams to try and, just to kind of improve the process, and then the integration piece would be secondary to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think improve the process is humankind. I think we're making an assumption that there is a process and that there is a structure and that there is, that muscle being built. I mean, I've been part of companies where, they don't even have recognized product owners, that they don't really even have a backlog. Some of them haven't logged into their project management tools in a year or two. It's shocking to hear that, but I think we've all worked at different companies where there's different flavors of a process. And so I'm trying to get them stood up as quickly as possible, building that muscle. So then when they do want to do add-ons or they want to do some integrations or bolt-ons, it is a very simple process, and everyone's getting on the same page as quickly as possible.
And like, just to clarify on the shape, size, scale of those businesses, you said sort of lower mid-market. How big? Yeah. What's the kind of range of business size that you're working with?
Yeah, so I just speaking to the engineering teams, it could be just like a team of 20 to 50 people to, close to 100, 150. But I think anything more than like 20 engineering teams probably needs some structure and support. If it's a company that has like 5 engineers and not planning doing add-ons, I'm probably not your guy.
Got you. Yeah. And then like do you have sight of what their revenue might be at those teams?
Yeah, so I think the lower middle market's anywhere between 50 to 500 million.
Okay.
I'd say.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, that's good to know.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
In case somebody wants to work with you quickly after the show. So what would you say? Because obviously we looked at some stats before the show, and according to McKinsey, only around 30% of M&A achieve like synergy targets, right? What would you say are the main 3 things that PE firms should check or do before doing the bolt-ons from your perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question. Obviously, from the engineering delivery perspective, I think number 1 is is there a roadmap and who owns it? Number 2, is there any reporting or metrics around the engineering teams themselves? And then number 3, do the teams have assigned roles? And I think all of it goes back to the theme of just accountability. And like, is there accountability spread across the engineering teams? Typically it's the wild, wild west, and they're vibe coding or shipping things as they go. And in the PE-backed world, we know there needs to be a lot more structure. There's a lot more expectations. There's a lot more pressure than what they handled in the past. And a lot of these companies are going from a startup mode where, they have flyby requirements, or, it's relaxed for a little bit. And then all of a sudden there's a customer that they can win. So people are working weekends, and that leads to a lot of burnout and stress, and having a structure and getting a team on a delivering cadence is paramount to that company's success.
Right. So what did you say? So PE firm should check the roadmap governance. You said second one was, is there a metrics tracking in terms of the performance of development team? And the third one?
Accountability.
The defined roles. Like if they don't have any product people on the team, if there's if they don't have engineering pods or scrum teams or whatever flavor of agile that they want to take on, if it's the wild, wild west, then they need to start building that structure up so that they can scale it up and be able to get their value out of the company.
And is it like, are there any red flags that you would say if PE firms see those red flags, they should not touch that company at all?
No, I think it's not really. I think a lot of it is savable, in my opinion. I don't think I've ever been into a company and just kind of threw up my hands. It was like, hey, they can't do it. These muscles are so easy to build. It's just so overlooked. I think a lot of the red flags from due diligence come from just the underlying structure of the technology itself, not the delivery governance structure.
Mm-hmm. And what happens with, like, have you seen things where there might be a kind of failure of the bolt-on? Is that an often occurrence? And if so, what is it that might cause those things to happen?
Yeah, it's a great question. The failure of the add-ons, I think, would come from either not doing great due diligence of either the technology itself or realizing a little bit too late that, hey, this is something that doesn't really mesh with our product. I've seen it a couple of times where it was, we were integrating a company and they have this new technology and we're just like, okay, we need to treat this company as a separate thing and as a separate entity. It's like they're profitable, they're doing well, but we can't really merge it because they're two separate products. And so, I'm not in those conversations. I'm not in those due diligence phases with those add-ons. So I'm just kind of dealing with the fallout from trying to integrate some of these teams. But I have come across this in the past where it's just like, not really sure why we're adding on this product, but we're going to do our best to integrate it.
That sounds like a strategy overhead. Like, right. Oh, these will fit together, but then actually looking at the practicalities of those things and the audience and the product and technology, and it's like, no, they don't fit together.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like oil and water. And so it's like, okay, well, as long as they're profitable and we're just going to treat it as a separate island here, and we're going to kind of keep things separate.
And what would you say is more challenging, integration of egos or technology?
Yes. No, it's a great question. I think I've done this probably 12 to 15 times in 12 to 15 different engagements. And my favorite part is the different cultures that I've been working with. I know I've worked with teams from all over the world, from Argentina to Italy to, Canada, and all over the United States, from California, Texas, New York, Iowa. And I think that's my favorite part of my job, is meeting different types of people, different cultures, seeing how things are done in those teams and how they've sort of adapted. But yes, there are egos. Yes, that the human politics part of it does play a lot, and it's hard to find a playbook to address that. I think having high EQ and high empathy in their situation is really helpful. I've been typically on the acquirer side. I've only been on the acquired side very few times, and it is a different situation. The acquired side, you get a little bit less visibility into what's happening on the executive level. You are left in the dark a little bit, and I've sort of developed that empathy for the acquiring companies because I've been in their shoes before. I understand how that feels. So I understand the egos. I understand the catchphrase of, oh, we're from PE and we're here to help is terrifying to hear. And so, there's definitely a nuance there, but yes, ego comes to the forefront. And I think having people that are high EQ and empathetic to people's situation helps a lot.
And where would you say it's most challenging? At the team level, the people you're supporting directly, or into the kind of management teams that you're sort of feeding up to?
Again, yes. Every layer has their own ego. Humans, we love change, right? People love getting just bought out and getting thrown into a system and changing everything that they're, uprooting. No, I mean, starting with the team structure, I think for myself, it is easier when I'm able to explain why we're doing things and why there's a benefit, and saying, hey, this is the process that you guys are going to be joining, and this is why it's going to benefit your day to day. And I've actually had very little pushback from teams. In fact, they've been they've been adapting processes over time and learning from their own mistakes, but they've never had a full-fledged process and structure and delivery. And so they've actually embraced it very well. And a lot of the A players are excited to get away from that burnout structure of working super hard and, getting out of that startup mode. And so I think that, creating some structure around the process is really helpful. Now, that's just the team level. But yes, as you kind of move up and understand, I think people do feel threatened, and they do feel like maybe I'm stepping on toes by taking away some of that structure. And I have to remind them, hey, I'm not here forever. I'm not here to be sticky. I'm here to set this up and make sure you guys are set up for success. And then I walk into the sunset.
Love that.
Hopefully.
I could literally see you in my head walking into the
sunset. I'm definitely wearing a cowboy hat. There's a horse and some old Western music. But yeah, typically that's how it works out. And I've been trying to perfect that over the years. And, I've worked alongside other consulting companies, and I've heard the phrase land and expand. And that just never felt good to me. I think as a consultant, we don't have the, what is it called? The doctor's pledge to always do good and do no evil. I feel like for consultants, we need that pledge that you're there to make your client better than when you arrived. And for me, to make them better in self-organizing teams that we talked about earlier, is that they're able to be self-organized, that they can handle this without me and not creating that dependence.
What's your best piece of advice for kicking off those relationships?
I do it in person. I try to fly out and meet my clients in person. I know ever since COVID, work from home is very typical, and I haven't had the chance all the time to meet people in person, but kind of getting outside of work, getting drinks, getting dinners together, and really establishing that relationship. Really understanding different people's personalities. And I will say having executive sponsorship and having executive backing does help, because I developed great relationship with the executive team. Usually it's typically the CTOs or VPs of engineering that are bringing me in to help them. So having them spread that message of, hey, Thomas is here to help and he's not here to stay forever is really helpful too. So
sounds really good what you do, and have good connections. It's more important sometimes than anything else. You usually spend around 12 months working with your sort of companies that you engage with. Can you tell us about one engagement that almost broke you?
I don't think it's been the engagements themselves. I've had to work with some difficult personalities. I've worked with engineers that some of them would show up, someone came into a retrospective and I'm pretty sure they were intoxicated and they said some pretty wild stuff, and we had to end the meeting very promptly. The engagements themselves, I don't think have truly broken me.
Have you ever felt like you want to give up and walk away?
No, honestly, I haven't. I truly love what I do. I really enjoy working with people from different cultures, people from different companies, different sizes. I think that's the most fun part for me, is that I enjoy seeing people do well. I enjoy seeing that progress. And if I can get people on the same page and understanding why I'm there, then, I think there is a reason why I keep getting engagements and I keep getting referrals, is because people do enjoy the work that I do. So I haven't really encountered any difficult engagements, I would say.
Very lucky you, and obviously have a very good personality. It pays off.
For now, right? That's knocking on wood.
Are you using AI at all to support with like help with the integrations?
Oh, absolutely. AI is getting shoved down in every single portfolio company as we speak, and I use it on a daily basis. I believe that it is an amplifier, an accelerator, and like we talked before, about 80% of companies do not have mature, high-performing engineering teams, and I believe that AI didn't create that gap. That gap already existed, but AI is going to make that gap fatal. I really believe that the companies that are integrating AI into not only their operations, but into their product, if they're not mature enough, or if they are not working on their delivery structure as we speak, that they're going to fall further behind because it's going to create even further bottlenecks.
And because obviously you work in agile, what do you think is going to happen to agile with the AI, right? Because we might not need those 2 or 3 or 4 weeks for sprint anymore, and some of the things can be built in 2-3 days. What do you think is going to happen there?
Yes. So if you've been on LinkedIn the last few months, Agile's dead, Scrum is dead, all of that. And I'm sure it was written by AI as well. And if we take a step back and realize what Agile is, being Agile is a mindset. And if I had to distill it down to one sentence, I would say being Agile is delivering customer value as quickly as possible. And to me, that's what AI is. It is allowing people to move faster, to get rid of the everyday tasks that take up from being creative and getting things out to market quickly. So, no, if anything, Agile is even more important for organizations to adopt. Now, the frameworks around them, I think that is what we need to start discussing. Of, hey, for Scrum, is a 2-week cadence even? Is that going to hold the teams behind even further? Should there be 1-day sprints? I'm not sure. I'm very interested to see how that space turns out.
I always felt that too, that framework got so crystallized and such a thing. And kind of, I felt personally, it was quite disjointed from the original concept of just really highly skilled people in their field, collaborating, working together to get shit done as quick as possible,
Yes.
Yeah.
You nailed it. It's become a religion even. And I think a lot of people are, again, talking about like the industry is built with the certifications and the trainings, and, it has become an industry. And I love what you said. It has literally gotten away from delivering value to customers, which was how it was intended to be. So
I remember working with one company, and I remember we had on the sprint, one of the items was delivering a button, and I was asking what was the value of for the customer to deliver that button.
Wait, was it Amazon you were working for?
Sorry, I'm not going to say what company that was, but anyway. But what I'm saying is, I completely agree with you. Two of you are saying everybody was so focused on delivering something in those 2-week sprints. Nobody was questioning what if we were to deliver this item, how the life of our customers is going to change.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think every single company I've been to, I've never come into a company and be like, oh, wow, your backlog is perfect. Like, these stories are broken out perfectly. Every company that I've been to does that the worst possible way. They're focused on the how they're doing and not the what. And unfortunately, I've been to companies where engineers are straight up don't know how their end users use their product. And that, I think, is the biggest issue that I try to come and fix, is figure out how can we adjust the backlog to show the value that we're delivering and why we're doing things, and build that muscle into the engineering team so they can start asking the right questions and they can get to that value a little bit earlier and deliver it earlier, rather than, basically this waterfall Scrum zombie that's been out there in all these companies.
And can I ask you, how do you do that? How do you make the engineering teams realize how the delivery will impact the end customers?
Yeah, great question. So I think it starts with is there a product owner on the team? And unfortunately, I've been to a lot of companies where they haven't invested in that department. So I think that's, again, paramount, is having someone that is product on the team, that owns the backlog and understands their customers and can speak to it. So if there is a person on the team, working with them to ensure that the work in the backlog correctly reflects what value that they're delivering. Typically the titles are, how we're doing it, or we're doing this, or this is the technology that we're using. And we need to change that and revert it to saying, hey, this is the customer that we're targeting. This is how they're using the system. And this is the value we need to deliver, and let the engineers figure out how we can get to that quicker. I would say every single backlog I've ever been to has been more technology focused, and how the engineers are going to deliver the value and not what the actual value is.
And when you say value, are you saying quantifiable value or value to the customer, or both?
Both. Yeah, absolutely both. I think it depends on what the product is, or what the team is focused on, or what the backlog is shaped like. But any type of value, whether it is the quantifiable or how the customer is using the product, I think that needs to be obvious, whether it's from the project level to the feature level, or breaking it down into the user stories. I think that needs to be visible first and foremost. And that's the first thing I look into the backlog, is how are the user stories shaped? Are they shaped into the value delivery? Or are they shaped into how the engineers are doing it?
Mm-hmm. And when you sort of changing that process, do you normally include all of the engineering teams? Like, is it that I guess obviously you had the Bolt-Ons, so you have like several companies coming together. So do you train those teams of developers all together at the same time? What's your sort of approach?
Yeah, I usually do one team at a time. I've typically have gone, like, the most teams I could take on would be like 6 teams at a time, because I have to kind of stagger their sprint cadences. So the sprint start dates would be like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then the next would be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So that's like the max that I can do. But yeah, I usually do one team at a time, working with them, working into the backlogs. And then again, the whole point isn't to be dependent on me to teach them and continually do it for them. I want to teach them to build that muscle. And if they're picking it up quickly, I try to figure out what's my off ramp with those teams as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm. And I saw somewhere, I think you mentioned that you've created this PE board level engineering reporting tool, or I don't know what it looked like, but I just really wanted to ask you, like, how did it work and what did it help you with?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, using our best friend Claude, he's been able to, before AI, reporting used to be just a pain in the ass. Honestly, it was, especially with Jira, it is just so hard to get some of those metrics out of there. And with Claude, being able to extract the numbers and the sprint statistics and the backlog growth, it is so easy to create a dashboard that we can dig more into the numbers and really try to figure out what is the thesis. I mean, starting off, what was the thesis of why we bought this company? And then kind of distill it down from there and work with the executive team. What is the next quarterly goal? Okay, from there, where is that in the backlog? Okay, how are the teams working on it to this day? And then work back to the top. So I think one of my favorite reporting that I did was the PE firm wanted to know all the features that the teams were working on and what's the ROI of those features. And so we worked backwards, working with each one of the teams, figuring out, okay, what are the features that they're working on and how can we reshape those features into not what you're doing, but why you're doing it and the value it's being delivered. And then from there, we did just a rough estimate of, hey, let's say there's a team of 5. Let's figure out what their average salary is over the year, divide it by the number of sprints, and then figure out what their velocity is. And basically we came up with a metric that was, hey, this is how much we spend on that team per story point. So let's make up a number and say it's $100 per story point, and they do, 10 story points a sprint. So $1,000 a sprint. And then from there, we can work with sales to figure out, okay, for this feature, what's your estimated ARR return? Right? Is this $1 million feature? Do you think you can go sell this and you can get us maybe even a couple $100,000? And what we uncovered was there was a team working on features that there was no ROI, that they were saying, hey, this is actually just cool, something cool we thought of and to do. And sales saying, hey, I can't sell this. And so what that did was put even more of a magnifying glass of, hey, there's a lot of engineering teams out there just kind of winging it or thinking, hey, we have this cool things, and these companies don't talk to each other. The sales department isn't telling engineering, hey, this is the highest ROI that we can do. Let's start working on this feature. And the engineering team isn't telling sales, hey, we're going to work on this instead. So I think that was pretty eye-opening.
That tracks. And it's still so surprising because those businesses aren't really that huge, right? It makes sense if you're talking enterprise and you've got massive siloed teams, but still the teams, I guess, you just in your day-to-day head down, and then you don't kind of converse with the team building the stuff or the team selling the stuff.
Absolutely. I think it goes back to accountability, honestly. I think that everyone, again, the Spider-Man meme of everyone pointing to each other, I think that no one is stepping up and saying that, hey, someone needs to own the reporting and metrics and needs to work across the enterprise to figure out, hey, what does sales need to sell? Hey, how can we get engineering focused on the right thing? And then working with customer success to figure out, hey, are these customers happy with what we're delivering?
Yeah, that was my next question, actually. In your experience and given all the companies you've worked with, who is it that owns the understanding of the customer?
Yeah, I mean, it depends, right? Is it an existing customer or a customer that they're going for, right? If it's a customer they're going for, it should be sales. If it's an existing customer, it needs to be product working alongside customer success. So customer success is embedded with those customers, should be on a daily or weekly basis, right? They've got great relationships with them, and customer success should be able to talk to product, who owns the backlog, in terms of what they're working with. Now, product needs to own the backlog. They need to figure out how can we integrate our customers' feedback without creating a bespoke product for only one customer. And I feel like that's probably the hardest balance in any job, right? Is creating a product that could attract multiple customers, but bespoke enough where you're keeping your most profitable customers happy.
Yeah, and you said that often there isn't like an established product role within some of those companies. Is that the same for customer success, or is there always customer success in those size businesses?
I'm not really sure, actually. I don't think I've ever come across an organization that didn't really have a customer success department.
Okay.
Which is interesting. I feel like on the engineering side, it is more expected to wear multiple hats, where, some teams don't even have QA members, or some of them didn't have product, or, the engineering lead was doing multiple things, but I haven't really seen that in other departments.
Okay. So there's always a customer success department. The weekly, the heads in tech are wearing kind of multiple heads, so there might be a missing QA, but then there is a potential missing product person.
I wouldn't even say potential. I think it's actually more common than you would think.
Okay.
Which is wild because, again, someone is speaking to the head of engineering or the engineering leads and saying, hey, these are what we need. The engineering leads they don't have the same mindset as people in product or someone in sales. Like, they are thinking of how to do the work. And so they've built this muscle in their head that, hey, I need to translate these requirements down into the how. And then essentially what they end up doing is creating a waterfall environment where they have this perfect state in their mind, and then they're going to deliver it over 2 weeks and until it's finally delivered. And this is why you need this product person that to take a step back and say, hey, we don't need to deliver everything perfectly. Let's get something out there, get customer feedback, and then keep working on it iteratively. Because I think it's hard for engineers to understand that there's a world that not everything needs to be perfect, and that we just need to keep the customers happy and get an MVP, because maybe what they want to build versus what the customer needs, there's a gap.
Yeah, that is so true. I see that so often where, because you can, with technology, you just build out all of the different scenarios or something, but then actually on the front end of the use from the customer, they actually only need one piece of that.
Exactly. And I think actually, speaking of AI earlier, I really do believe that the product role is actually going to be even more amplified and more important in AI, in the AI era, because I think product managers can build it themselves at this point. They can go into Claude Code and write up specs and build up, proof of concepts and work directly with the customer success or even customers themselves and really deliver sort of the MVP, and working with engineers to obviously make sure that whatever they're building is secure, or making sure that, it's more amplified. But I really believe that the product role is more critical now.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I wonder if all of those companies have kind of customer success and that's a team focused on the customer, what happens? Like, why isn't there that kind of translation from the customer focused team into the product? Why do you need that middleman, if that makes any sense of what I'm saying?
Yeah, because I think the customer success is focused on something other than, they don't really have an engineering background. They are very much focused on the happiness of their customer, as they should be. They are advocates for them. But kind of what I spoke about earlier, we can't create bespoke products for one customer, right? We're trying to build a product that can attract multiple customers. And once you start going down that road of very customized software, it becomes very expensive to upkeep.
I actually work for one business that I remember they had one very important customer, and he asked for one sort of completely different dashboard or whatever it was. And it was a massive amount of money to build that additional, obviously, functionality. And I remember that customer has never even logged in to use that functionality. So
Yep.
it is a very difficult position, I think, sometimes for companies, just between like saying yes to everything and keeping the important customers or the ones that are paying the most, and keeping the integrity of the product.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go for it, Thomas. Sorry.
No, sorry. I was going to say it's a negotiation, right? And I think to your question, Simon, like, why do we need products? I think someone owning the backlog and being able to take a step back and realizing that we can't customize it per customer, and be able to negotiate and extract maybe what are the top 3 things that customer wants, and then talking to other customer success people saying, hey, would your customer adopt something like this? And then building a product with that vision is sort of the person that you need.
Yeah.
And so, because back to your point on the customer success, they're focused on the current customers of the business,
Right.
so they don't
Exactly.
actually do that kind of forward thinking that potentially sales might do. And how do we pull all of these different customer cohorts together into one cohesive product that everyone can use and get value from?
Exactly.
I wanted to ask you, because I think you mentioned somewhere, I don't remember where that was, that sometimes on the board level or board reporting level, there could be sometimes creative reporting from the management team. Have you kind of seen that happening? That when what's going on with the bolt-on, integration process was kind of like creatively altered or somewhat not 100% correctly delivered to the board?
Yeah, I think that, the board level reporting is all about telling a story, right? And I believe that the executive team don't want to tell a story that makes them look bad. And so I think there is some creative ways to ensure that, let's take AI adoption, for example. If I'm a CTO and my company is submitting 3 times the amount of pull requests that we're submitting, I'm going to call that a win in the board level. Say, look at how AI is enhancing our business and improving us. However, maybe they're not reporting that, hey, all those PRs are stuck in a feature branch, or none of them are making it into production, or hey, there's a ton more bugs being created due to AI. And so maybe they're leaving a little bit of a gap out. So again, I think it's all about telling the story, making sure you're telling the right story, whether it's a good story or not is important. Yeah.
Okay, so I would say what you've built, like kind of reporting tool, is kind of more reliable than some kind of stories. It's always better to have the hard numbers that you can extract from, let's say, Jira or whatever other platforms.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do weekly level reporting. If it was monthly or quarterly, there isn't enough time to kind of catch those yellow or even red flags. So I submit weekly reporting to the executive team, and then I help out with the quarterly board reporting, however frequently they want to meet. And then depending on what they want to see, that's sort of where we customize the reporting. If maybe they don't care too much about the individual level of sprint predictability or velocity of teams. They want to see where we're at with our initiatives. They want to see what are the ROIs of the features, and kind of distilling and translating the value creation plan and thesis of the purchase into the engineering teams.
And what kind of changes or improvements have you seen with implementing your processes in the companies?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first off, having any sort of metrics and reporting is a great way to start. I think that's first and foremost. Whether the numbers are pretty or not, it doesn't matter, as long as we're able to report something and then having a baseline improve upon it. But I think the number one thing that I'm probably the most proud of, and something that I think is extremely important, is sprint predictability and making sure that we get to as close as 95% as possible. I think it's impossible to be 100%. And when I say sprint predictability, it's, did we complete exactly what we planned in the sprint? And from there, it kind of distills upwards, right? If we're completing on a predictable basis and we're able to complete at least 95% of the work, then we know when we can track things to be done on a very certain level, right? And if we can speak to that, then we can tell customers with confidence when things are done. And if we have a roadmap that we're extremely confident in, then we can start really planning and executing and even reporting upwards to the board saying, hey, this is what we plan to get done, and we're extremely confident in it getting done. I think if a team isn't predictable, then that all falls apart. I would love, my favorite metric would be, and I know Anastasija, we've talked about this in the past, how could we get customer satisfaction, ensuring what we're delivering is actually valuable to the customer. I would love some type of combination of metrics that show that. But if that doesn't exist, I think the best thing I could do is, hey, we're going to ship as predictably as possible.
Fascinating. And do you spend, in order to get to that point, is there a bit of work that you might do around supporting teams with accurate estimating?
Yes, exactly. And I think that's what it all comes down to, is how can we break down the backlog as small as possible into bite-sized chunks so that they can deliver predictably. And as human beings, we are terrible at estimating time. However, we are very good at comparisons. So if I give you guys an example, if I say, hey, the studio you're in right now, can you give me to the second, how long is it going to take you to paint that studio? You probably would be off by a large factor of number. But if I say, hey, that studio versus, a closet in your room, can you tell me which one's going to take longer? You would obviously say your studio, unless, you have a very large size closet, which congratulations.
Yeah, it depends if it's mine or your closet.
Yeah, there you go. So yes, there is difference there, but yeah. So that's what we're teaching, is how can we create these buckets in our mind where we know this is something small, medium, large, using story points obviously, and putting those things into buckets. And once you start building that muscle over and over and over again, and using a team that stays stable and it's the same members of the team, you start to see some pretty cool stuff. If they can look at a user story, or they can look at a backlog, break it down quickly, understand how to compare those stories and get to that point.
Yeah, and super rewarding for the team to actually then see that and the result of that work and what they've kind of done. With everything going on, with AI and the push to kind of integrate AI into the process, what's your take on AI's capabilities at the minute? Could AI actually build enterprise grade software?
Yeah, that's a great question. I use AI on a daily basis. I'm sure you guys do too. So I think we see the potential with it. We see where it could be 3 to 5 years from now. You start to see really cool stories of, brothers creating this software. And I think it was in a health tech space, and now it's valued at, hundreds of billions of dollars. So there is that potential out there. However, I will say that you will also see the reverse side of the things, where agents are going rogue and deleting entire company databases. And what I spoke to before of, there's a lot of immature engineering delivery teams. I think AI is only going to amplify that. So I think the companies that are integrating AI, that are the top, 20% of companies, they are only going to accelerate. And I think you're going to see the companies that are struggling are because they don't have those engineering muscles, in engineering delivery maturity muscles in them. And they're actually going to start, I think you might see some big companies getting replaced by maybe even smaller companies or more agile companies.
Yeah, that makes sense. What would you say you're most worried about for the future of tech integrations?
That's a great question. I am most worried about the 80% of companies that are thinking that they can just drop AI into the engineering teams or say, hey, use AI, and that they're going to get somewhere faster, or that they're just going to magically get results. I think you will see in the next 12 to 18 months, a lot of companies that are going to be scrambling to catch up to their competitors, because their competitors either had the delivery structure embedded into them to where they see the benefits and they see the ROI from using AI, versus the ones that aren't. And again, AI did not create that gap. It's honestly just going to make it more fatal if you do not take the structure of your engineering operations team seriously.
And what's how are you supporting teams to integrate AI into their processes at the minute?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the A players on engineering teams, the most productive ones, have been using AI for years already. So I think that it's really about getting the not so A players either brought on quickly or trying to clear the bottlenecks. So again, AI to me, it's nothing but a tool. It's an amplifier. So if your team has, let's say, 3 A players on it and someone who isn't delivering as much, you're going to see that amplified. Those 3 A players are going to be submitting PRs and getting things out there as quickly as possible, but someone's going to be holding them back. And you're only as good as a team as your least performing player. So it's really focusing on making sure that everyone is kind of staying close to the same level and removing those bottlenecks. I think something companies don't think about a lot is that there's a lot of gates and structure into delivering software into production. There's, PR requests. I think there's something like PR review times are up 441%. And, I'm going to make up a number. I don't know what the exact number is, but let's say 150 million PRs were released into or created last year. There's like 150 million a month getting created. And so there is a huge bottleneck of work that is just sitting there. And if you have a team that is not all fully bought into AI or predictably delivering AI with AI, then it's just going to enhance that bottleneck.
So basically, it's more software is being built, but you need also somebody who is reviewing that software before it goes to live.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of companies I work with have at least 2 PR reviewers, and they can't be AI. So we're creating more work and more bottlenecks for ourselves, which is fine. I think there are ways to go and make that a little bit more effective. I think engineers should eventually become more of maybe oversight, or people that are looking over agents and being more of like a quality manager, let's say, rather than actually the ones coding themselves.
Do you think it's possible if those engineers in the future are not going to be the coders themselves? So let's say they came, when the times when the coders were not needed anymore. Like, how do you think we can make sure that the reviews that they're making, they're doing, they're actually correct?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, AI is, again, it's nothing but a tool, and it's only going to be as good as the context that you give it. So if engineers are seeing repeated mistakes, they can go back and provide that context. However, we have seen in the past where even if you give an agent the best type of context and give it as much guardrails as possible, they still go rogue. There's still companies out there dealing with rogue agents that, again, have deleted entire companies' databases or information. And even though the smartest engineer is the one that created it. So I think it's really important to set up those guardrails. And I don't know if an engineer will ever get replaced in the next few years. Again, you can kind of see where AI is taking us and you see how many incredible things it's doing. But at this point in time, I don't think it's reliable enough to completely replace those jobs. I think the people that it will replace are the ones that aren't adopting it or adapting it or working with AI.
Mm. And in 10 years time, what do you think is going to happen with M&A in general? Is it like the job that you're doing yourself? You just said that probably AI is not going to replace us, not yet. Do you think it's possible, like in 10 years time, that your job is completely done by AI?
I mean, I don't think anyone can see 10 years in the future. And to be honest, my job right now didn't even exist when I went to school. So it's really hard to say. I'm sure things are going to be completely different now than it will be in 10 years. How it'll change, I'm not exactly sure. All I will say is that it's better to be on the side of learning how to use AI, how to give it context, and how to adapt it into your workflow than being anti-AI or saying, hey, this is just a fad right now. It's like, I don't know if you guys remember, there was a magazine that said that, the internet's a fad and this is just going to pass. And like, look where we're at right now. So you do not want to be on that side. You don't want to be on the, horse and buggy side saying, hey, that Ford Model T is just a fad. Like cars aren't going to go, horse and buggies aren't going anywhere. The cars are just a fad. So,
And what are you most excited about for the next 12 months?
I'm excited to see the progress that AI is going to make. And I'm excited to work with the organizations that need help with their structure and embedding AI into their organization. I think that there's a ton of work out there. Again, the metrics and numbers kind of support that majority of companies are immature. And so I think there's going to be a point in time where people are realizing, hey, we're just not getting the ROI out of it. We're not getting the benefits. And someone's going to realize, hey, it's because of all these X, Y, and Z bottlenecks. And so I guess selfishly and personally, I'm excited to get into those engagements. I'm also excited to see the different software and capabilities that as consumers we're going to get. I think we're going to see a lot of cool competition out there. We're going to see a lot of cool products being created by maybe smaller and leaner engineering teams. So I think if anything, as consumers, we're also going to benefit from it.
Yeah, and on that point of smaller, leaner engineering teams, that like puts you in quite a exciting space, because now with the use of AI in that kind of development cycle, that really gives you some leverage on those bigger players in the market, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, AI is nothing but an amplifier. And so I'm very excited to work eventually with maybe smaller, leaner engineering teams where the product manager is creating those POCs. The engineers are working with the agents, and maybe my engagements are going to be shortened in time because people are going to be able to pick up the process quickly. But again, I think it is very exciting times in the engineering world.
And Thomas, if somebody wants to work with you, sort of how do you normally engage with companies?
Yeah, great question. So there's a couple ways to reach out. For anyone at a current portfolio company, any CTOs or VPs of engineering that want to see if their organization is healthy and if you are ready to go through an AI transformation, they can go take my free engineering health check. It's thomasvaran.com/health-check. It's 8 questions, takes about 2 minutes, and it's free. I think the baseline is like 75 out of 100. If you're scoring above that, then probably doing pretty well. I don't really need someone like me. If you're below that, then definitely reach out. You can find me at LinkedIn at Thomas Varan.
Awesome. Amazing, Thomas. So thanks so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure having this conversation. I think we could go on for another couple of hours uncovering what else AI is going to make better or worse, but it's all exciting. So yeah, thanks so much for joining us, and thanks everyone who's tuned in to listen to us or watch us, and see you at the next episode.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.